We will be talking about the forms of reasoning.
I'm Steven.
I'm Donovan.
I'm Josh.
I'm Nicholas Lincoln.
I'm Catherine.
I'm Calvin.
I'm Matthew.
And we're going to be discussing 4 types of reasoning today. Our first type of reasoning is reasoning by
Cause.
reasoning by cause, reasoning by example,
Reasoning by analogy.
and then reasoning by form.
Sign.
By
Sign.
So, reasoning by cause is the first type of reasoning. It's fairly simple. Basically, what it means is if you do an action, it's an argument that if you do an action, there's going to be a result. And there's 2 types of reasoning, or subtypes of reasoning to this. There is sufficient sub-reasoning, and then there is necessary cause.
Necessary cause is the idea that when for an effect to be in effect, the cause must cause the effect. But it's necessary. But it's for example, if it was a necessary cause for water to freeze is the temperature has to be lower than 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And a sufficient cause would be a cause that is sufficient to cause the effect, and there doesn't have to be any other factor such as decapitation. Decapitation will kill a person. There doesn't have to be any other factor in order to kill someone.
Alright, our next type of reasoning is reasoning by example. Reasoning by example is a very common type of reasoning, and involves you taking certain realities and creating your own conclusion from it. For example, given the fact that Denver has crime, that Los Angeles has crime, and that New York has crime, you can conclude that large cities have crime. The strength of this reasoning is dependent on how closely related the examples are. For example, if I replaced New York with Japan and Los Angeles with Anaheim, the example might not be so strong.
The third form of reasoning is reasoning by analogy, which occurs when you present 2 similar cases, but when trying to argue that one is similar to the other, you argue that the first case is true because of this cause, therefore that the second case must be true. An example, this can be compared to transitive property in math. Because if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. See, notice how I used reasoning by analogy to explain that reasoning by analogy is similar to transitive property. There are 2 types of forms, literal and figurative.
Literal reasoning by analogy is when you use 2 cases that are in the same category. For example, the lesson plan you can use to teach math to 5th graders in California should probably work in Colorado as well. Now, a figurative reasoning by analogy is a little different from that. It means that you use 2 cases that are in more different categories, but the same principles still apply. For example, a real-life example of this is when parents give children a goldfish to prove they are responsible enough to take care of a dog. Though taking care of a goldfish and taking care of a dog are very different things, the idea is that the responsibility should carry over.
And the final type of reasoning is reasoning by ideas. This is when the presence of one object indicates the presence of another.
An example of reasoning by sign is that if you see smoke, then you can infer that there is a fire somewhere else. Moreover, reasoning by sign can be applied to characteristics. For instance, if the drinking age is over 21, then you can infer that if a person drinks, they are over 21. However, that is not always the case.
So, we have just told you 4 different types of reasoning: reasoning by cause, reasoning by example, reasoning by analogy, and reasoning by sign. We hope we have educated you in these types of reasonings.